She begged the CEO to pose as her boyfriend. He took her hand, and soon the pretend romance felt real. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. The rain tapped gently against the glass wall of the cafe as Lena Carter gripped her lukewarm coffee, her fingers trembling not from the cold but from panic. Across the table sat Ethan Reed, a man she'd barely met once in her life, the man she was now begging to pretend to be her boyfriend. Please, she said softly, eyes glistening, just for one dinner. You don't have to say much. I can't go alone. Ethan looked at her, the corners of his sharp jaw still as stone. The air between them buzzed with confusion and something else, curiosity. Outside, thunder rolled faintly over downtown Chicago. Lena's voice cracked as she explained, "It's my parents' anniversary tonight. My entire family will be there. Everyone who's ever told me I wasn't good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough. They'll all be waiting to laugh at me again." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "They always ask about my love life like it's a punchline." Ethan blinked slowly, watching her tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her movements honest and desperate. A few weeks ago, she'd interviewed at his company for a marketing assistant position. He remembered her, nervous, passionate, unpolished, but sincere. And he'd remembered that sincerity because it was rare. "You want me," he said finally, "to pretend to be your boyfriend?" She nodded, biting her lip. "I'll owe you. Anything. I just can't face them alone tonight." Ethan leaned back, studying her. The rain streaked the window behind her, blurring the city lights into gold and gray. "You don't owe me anything," he said, "but you're sure this is what you want?" "I just need to survive tonight," she whispered. For a moment, Ethan almost said no. He had meetings, deadlines, a whole empire waiting. But something in her eyes, something raw, made him set the coffee cup down slowly. "All right," he said. One night, relief flooded her face. "Thank you," she breathed. He raised a brow, half smiling. "There are conditions, though. No fake kissing, no wild stories, and no one finds out who I am." "Deal," she said quickly. "You'll just be my boyfriend Ethan." "Just Ethan," he corrected, his voice low, calm, almost teasing. When they stood to leave, Lena hesitated, glancing at his crisp gray suit and tailored coat. "You look too expensive," she murmured. He chuckled under his breath. "I'll lose the tie." They stepped outside into the rain, and for the first time that night, Lena smiled. She didn't know his last name, didn't know that the man walking beside her controlled half the skyline she'd just been staring at. All she knew was that for one night, she wouldn't be alone, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. As they walked toward her old blue sedan, she dared a glance at him. "You really didn't have to say yes." He looked at her, rain glinting on his dark hair. "You asked," he said simply. "Sometimes, that's enough." The car door shut, the wipers began their slow rhythm. And as the city lights blurred into streaks of amber and silver, Lena's heart raced not from the act she was about to pull off, but from the man beside her who made pretending suddenly feel a little too real. The next evening came faster than Lena expected. The rain had cleared, leaving the city glazed in pale light, and her nerves were burning holes in her stomach. Ethan arrived exactly on time, wearing a navy shirt with the sleeves rolled just enough to look casual, but his composure still made him look like someone who belonged on a magazine cover. Lena opened her apartment door, breath-catching slightly. "You actually came," she said, half surprised. "I said I would," he replied calmly, glancing around the tiny hallway that smelled faintly of vanilla candles and fresh coffee. She grabbed her coat and her small clutch, her heart pounding as they stepped into the elevator. "My family's place is about an hour away," she murmured. "You can still back out." Ethan's lips curved faintly. "I do not back out once I have given my word." On the drive, she talked too much, trying to fill the silence. He listened, his eyes on the road, the glow of the dashboard reflecting off his profile. When she mentioned her parents' lake house and the constant competition between her and her cousin Madison, he only said, "Families are interesting battlegrounds." She laughed nervously. "You have no idea. The car rolled into the long driveway of a two-story suburban home, white lights strung across the porch. Laughter and music drifted out as Lena froze halfway up the steps. "You ready?" Ethan asked quietly. "Not even a little," she whispered. He reached out his hand. "Then take mine." Her fingers slipped into his, warm and steady, and for a moment the noise from inside faded away. The door opened before they could knock. "Lena!" a woman in her 50s exclaimed, pulling her into a hug. "And who is this?" "This is Ethan," Lena said quickly, voice higher than normal. "My boyfriend." Ethan extended a polite smile. "Ma'am, thank you for having me." The family dinner was chaos. The long table glowed under golden light, filled with roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and far too many opinions. Her uncle immediately started his interrogation. "So, Ethan, what do you do for a living?" Ethan smiled easily. "A bit of consulting, some project management." Lena nearly choked on her drink, praying no one connected the dots to the billionaire Ethan Reed. Her cousin Madison smirked. "Consulting? Sounds like code for unemployed." Lena opened her mouth, but Ethan beat her to it. "Actually, it is code for I have choices," he said evenly, not unkindly, but with enough quiet authority to silence the table. Her father chuckled. "I like him." The meal went on, stories shared, laughter louder. At one point, Lena reached for a glass and Ethan, without missing a beat, took it first and poured for her. It was a small act, unnoticed by most, but it made her chest tighten. They were supposed to be pretending, but his gestures did not feel fake. After dinner, the family moved to the patio for dessert. String lights swayed gently in the wind. Madison leaned in toward Lena, whispering, "Where did you find him? Seriously." "Work," Lena lied quickly, avoiding her cousin's sharp gaze. "He seems too good for you," Madison said with a laugh that was more venom than humor. Before Lena could reply, Ethan appeared beside her, hand settling lightly at her back. "You have something on your dress," he said softly, brushing away an imaginary crumb. Madison's smirk faltered. Ethan looked her straight in the eye. "You must be Madison. Lena told me you were the family's fashion expert." The shift in his tone, polite but edged, made Madison blink. "Oh, well, yes, I guess." He smiled. "You were right about one thing. She is too good for most people." Madison flushed and turned away. Lena stared up at him, speechless. "You did not have to do that," she murmured. "I know," he said, "but I wanted to." Later, when the guests began to leave, Ethan helped her mother clear the table, ignoring protests. Her father clapped him on the shoulder. "Good man. You should come again." As they drove back toward the city, the night quieted around them. Lena stared out the window, her heart light but confused. "You handled them better than I ever have," she said. "Years of board meetings," he replied with a grin. "Families are just the friendlier version." She laughed, glancing sideways at him. "You are good at pretending." His hands tightened on the steering wheel, voice softer now. "Maybe I am not pretending anymore." The silence that followed was not awkward. It was charged, warm, almost fragile. Outside, the highway lights blurred like slow-falling stars, and for the first time, Lena realized she was no longer afraid of going home. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly through the blinds of Lena's small apartment. She sat at her kitchen counter, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Her phone buzzed with a message from her mom. "Everyone loved Ethan. You finally picked a good one." She smiled faintly, reading it twice. It should have made her happy, but instead, it made her chest tighten with something she could not name. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the way his words from last night kept replaying in her head. "Maybe I am not pretending anymore." She pushed the thought away and grabbed her bag for work. Ethan had dropped her off near her place and disappeared into the early morning fog, promising to call later. She doubted he would. People like him lived in a different world. By noon, she was sitting at a shared desk in a co-working space downtown, working freelance design gigs to pay the rent. Her mind, however, was elsewhere. She kept glancing at her phone, hoping for a text that never came. When it finally did, her heart jumped. It was him. "Lunch?" the message read. She stared at it, biting her lip before replying, "Sure." They met at a small deli near the river, nothing fancy, the kind of place where no one recognized him. Ethan was already seated, jacket off, sleeves rolled, his expression softer than she remembered. "You came," he said, smiling when she sat down. "I was curious," she replied. fiddling with her napkin. "You are not an easy man to figure out." "Good," he said. "If I were, you would have lost interest already." She laughed, and for a moment, it felt normal. Two people sharing lunch. No lies, no pretending. But reality crept back when a tall woman in a gray suit entered the deli, scanning the room before walking straight toward their table. "Mr. Reed," she said briskly. "You have a conference call in 20 minutes. The Hong Kong team is waiting." Lena froze. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Thank you, Claire. I will take it from the car." The woman hesitated, glancing at Lena with thinly veiled judgment, then turned and left. Lena stared at him, stunned. "Mr. Reed?" she whispered. "As in Ethan Reed, the CEO of Evolve Group?" He sighed quietly, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After the next pretend dinner?" she snapped, her voice rising. People turned to look. "Lena," he said gently, "I did not lie. I just did not correct you." "That is the same thing," she shot back, standing. Her chair scraped against the floor. "Do you have any idea how foolish I feel? You let me pour my heart out about being unemployed, about struggling, while you—" Her voice cracked. "You sat there knowing you had everything I have ever worked for." "That does not make us different," he said, his tone quiet but firm. "Yes, it does," she whispered. "You get to choose to pretend to be normal. I do not." She turned and left before he could respond, her chest burning with humiliation. Outside, the air was sharp, the sun too bright. She walked aimlessly along the river, fighting tears. Every sound around her felt distant, the rumble of traffic, the chatter of strangers, the splash of water against the dock. Somewhere behind her, she thought she heard her name, but she kept walking. By the time she reached her apartment, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Ethan. She ignored it. For 3 days, she stayed quiet. Work piled up, emails went unanswered, but she could not bring herself to care. On the 4th evening, a knock sounded at her door. She hesitated, heart thudding, then opened it. Ethan stood there, holding something small in his hand, a framed photo from the family dinner. In it, he was pouring her a glass of wine, both of them laughing. "I am sorry," he said simply. "I should have been honest from the start. But that night, it was the first time in years I felt like I was not performing." She looked at him, torn between anger and the truth in his eyes. "You could have just told me," she said softly. "I know," he admitted, "but I was afraid you would stop looking at me the way you did that night." She swallowed hard, her voice trembling. "And how exactly did I look at you?" "Like I was human," he said. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city hummed quietly outside the window, 1,000 lives moving forward. Finally, Lena exhaled. "You cannot fix this with a picture, Ethan." "I am not trying to fix it," he said. "I am trying to start over." She stood there, torn between walking away and letting him in. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but certain. "You can start by telling me who you really are without the suit, without the title." He smiled faintly. "Deal." The tension eased, just slightly, but the distance between them still felt fragile. Still, when he left that night, he did so with hope, and she, for the first time, wondered if pretending had simply uncovered something real. Over the next few days, Lena tried to convince herself that the moment at the door had been closure, not a beginning. But something inside her refused to let go. Every time her phone lit up with a new message from Ethan, she hesitated before deleting it, her heart torn between anger and something far more dangerous, hope. On the 5th night, she finally texted him back. "If you want to talk, meet me where this whole lie began." The cafe was quieter than she remembered, the same soft hum of conversation, the same smell of espresso and rain from a week ago. Ethan was already there, sitting at their old table, no suit this time, just a simple gray sweater and jeans. When she walked in, his expression softened. "You came," he said quietly. "Do not thank me yet," she replied, taking the seat across from him. The silence stretched until she finally broke it. "You said you wanted to start over, so start." Ethan took a breath, his voice steady but stripped of its usual confidence. "My name is Ethan Reed. I run Evolve Group, but lately I have been running away more than leading. I built a company that looks perfect on the outside, but somewhere along the way, I forgot what real feels like. Then I met you, and for one night, sitting in your parents' living room, I felt like a man again, not a headline." Lena listened, her guard slowly cracking. You think words can fix what happened? No, he said. But actions might. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. What is this? She asked. A proposal, he said. Not that kind. I am launching a community project, a foundation that funds small artists and designers. It is called the Haven Project. I want you to lead the creative side. She blinked in disbelief. You are offering me a job? No, he said softly. I am offering you a chance to build something that matters, with me, not for me. She looked down at the envelope, then back at him. You are impossible, you know that? So I have been told, he said, smiling faintly. Against her better judgment, she smiled back. I will think about it. That is all I ask, he said. Over the next few weeks, the Haven Project became real. They worked side by side in an airy office space filled with sketches, color palettes, and coffee cups. Lena handled the creative design. Ethan oversaw the funding but made it clear she was the heart of the project. Slowly, the walls between them began to fade. There were quiet mornings when they would argue over font choices and end up laughing over donuts. There were late nights when she would catch him looking at her with that same unreadable expression he had worn the night of her parents' dinner. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Ethan walked her to her car. The streetlights painted everything in silver and gold. You know, she said, locking the door, for someone who claims not to be pretending anymore, you still act like a mystery. He smiled, leaning against the car. Maybe I am just afraid of ruining a good thing. Or maybe, she said, crossing her arms, you still think this is pretend. His smile faded, his eyes searching hers. Do you? She hesitated, then shook her head. Not anymore. The wind picked up, cool against her skin. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. I meant what I said that night. I have not felt this alive in years. Her heart raced, but she forced a small laugh. Careful, Mr. Reed. Someone might think you are flirting. Someone would be right, he said, voice low. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. Then a sudden flash went off. Someone had taken a photo. They both turned, startled, as a man disappeared around the corner with a camera. What was that? She asked, panic rising. Ethan's face hardened. Paparazzi. They must have followed me. Oh my God, she whispered, stepping back. My family will see that. Everyone will see that. He moved toward her quickly. Lena, I will handle it. But she shook her head. You cannot. This was supposed to be normal, real, not another headline. Without another word, she got into her car and drove off, her heart pounding harder with every mile. Ethan stood under the streetlight, watching her taillights fade into the dark, knowing he had just watched the best thing that had ever happened to him slip away again. And this time, it was not about lies, it was about the price of truth. By the next morning, the photo was everywhere. The image of Ethan Reed, one of the city's most powerful CEOs, leaning close to a young woman outside her car, spread like wildfire across business news sites and social media feeds. Lena's phone would not stop buzzing. Headlines screamed with speculation. Ethan Reed's secret girlfriend? The mystery woman behind the Haven Project. She sat on the edge of her bed, scrolling through the comments until her chest hurt. Some called her a gold digger. Others claimed she had seduced him for money. Each word was a dagger. When her mother called, her voice was worried but tinged with curiosity. Lena, honey, what is happening? Is it true? No, Lena said quickly, though her throat tightened. It is not what they think. Then tell me what to think, her mother pressed gently. Are you in love with him? Lena had no answer. Instead, she ended the call and sat in silence, tears burning behind her eyes. Across town, Ethan's office was chaos. His assistant was fielding non-stop calls from reporters, shareholders, and gossip blogs. He stood at the window, staring down at the skyline that had once been his kingdom and now felt like a cage. When his phone rang, he grabbed it instantly. Lena? He said. But it was not her. It was Claire, his PR director. You need to make a statement, she said sharply. The board is nervous. They want you to confirm or deny the relationship before the stock meeting. I am not confirming or denying anything, he said coldly. This is not their business. It is when the photo cost us 8% this morning, she snapped. Ethan hung up without replying. For the first time in years, he ignored every meeting, every crisis call, and drove straight to Lena's apartment. When she opened the door, her eyes were red, and her voice was cold. "You should not be here." "We need to talk," he said. "There is nothing to say, Ethan. You promised me normal, and this," she gestured at her phone, the flashing notifications, "is anything but." "I can fix it," he said. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "You cannot fix this. You cannot fix me being turned into a headline." She tried to close the door, but his hand stopped it. "Lena, I do not care about the articles or the rumors. I care about you." "That is not enough," she said quietly, "because I cannot be the woman everyone whispers about. I cannot live under your spotlight." "Then let me dim it," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "Let me walk away from all of it." She stared at him in disbelief. "You would give up everything? If it means I get to keep something real, yes." The sincerity in his tone made her heart ache, but fear was stronger. "You do not understand," she said softly. "You can survive a scandal. I cannot." She closed the door, and this time, he let her. Days turned into a blur. The Haven Project's office sat empty, the news cycle moved on, and silence filled the space where laughter used to echo. Then, one evening, Lena returned home to find a small envelope on her doorstep. Inside was a handwritten note and a single Polaroid photo, the same picture from the tabloids, but cropped differently. It showed only their hands, intertwined, no faces. Underneath, his handwriting read, "For once, I do not want to hide who I am or who I love. But I will respect your silence. The Haven Project will go on. Your name is already on the door. You built this, Lena, not me." Her eyes blurred with tears as she read it again and again. For the first time in days, she felt something other than fear, pride, gratitude, maybe even love. The next morning, she went to the new Haven Project office. The sign on the glass door read, "Creative Director, Lena Carter." Inside, the walls were bare, except for a single framed photograph on the main wall, an image of open hands reaching toward sunlight. She smiled through her tears. Outside, reporters still waited for a statement, but she walked past them without a word. Somewhere across the city, Ethan was doing the same, refusing interviews, turning down meetings. They both knew that silence could be powerful when it came from truth, not shame. And though they were miles apart, both carried the same thought that some stories are not meant to be hidden forever, only paused until the right moment to be told. Weeks passed, and the world slowly forgot the story that had once burned across every screen. The headlines had shifted to new scandals, new faces, new distractions. But for Lena, the silence that followed was heavier than the noise had ever been. She spent her mornings at the Haven Project office, designing programs for artists who reminded her of herself, people who had talent but no voice. The work grounded her. Yet there were moments when she caught herself staring at her phone, wondering if Ethan still thought about her. Across town, Ethan Reed was doing the one thing no one expected him to do, stepping back. He had delegated control of Evolve Group to his board and taken a sabbatical, spending his days volunteering quietly at community centers funded by the Haven Project. Cameras had stopped following him. The world had lost interest. But he had found something far more valuable: peace. One Friday afternoon, Lena attended an event at one of the new art studios they had opened under the Haven Project. The space buzzed with energy, local artists painting murals, children laughing, and a small band playing acoustic music in the corner. As she walked through the crowd, someone tapped her shoulder. "Excuse me, Miss Carter," a young volunteer said. "There is someone asking for you outside." Her stomach tightened. She stepped through the open door into the courtyard, where the golden afternoon light poured down like honey. And there he was. Ethan stood by the old oak tree, dressed simply in a white shirt and jeans, holding a small box in his hand. For a second, she could not move. "You should not be here," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Probably not," he said, smiling gently. "But I could not stay away anymore." "Ethan, the media, they have moved on," he interrupted. "They are busy tearing down someone else this week." His tone was light, but his eyes were serious. "I heard about your new projects. The murals, the scholarships, the kids. You did it, Lena. You made it real." She shook her head. "We made it real." He took a step closer. "No. You did. I just funded it. You gave it a soul." The sincerity in his voice made her throat tighten. "Why are you really here?" she asked. Ethan exhaled, glancing down at the small box. "Because there is something unfinished between us. Something real that deserves an ending or maybe a beginning." He opened the box to reveal a simple silver key, not a ring. "This is the key to a new studio space in the city center. It is yours, if you want it. But there is a condition." She blinked, confused. "A condition?" He smiled softly. "You have to let me work there with you. No headlines, no suits, no pretending." For a long moment, she just stared at him, the sun glinting off the metal key between them. "You really think we can go back to normal after everything?" she asked. "No," he said, "but maybe we can build something better than normal." A faint laugh escaped her lips, part disbelief, part relief. "You always have a way of saying things that make me want to believe you." "Then believe me," he said quietly, "because this time there is no deal, no contract, just choice." She took the key slowly, her fingers brushing his. The contact sent a shiver through her, the same spark that had started all of this weeks ago. "If I say yes," she murmured, "what happens next?" He smiled, that same soft, almost boyish smile she had only seen once before. "Then we stop pretending. We start living." Around them, the sounds of laughter and music drifted from inside the building, mingling with the hum of the city beyond. For the first time in months, Lena felt light. She looked at the key, then at him. "All right," she said quietly. "Let us build something real." Ethan's shoulders relaxed, his eyes shining with something between joy and disbelief. "Together?" "Together," she said. He reached for her hand, and this time, when their fingers intertwined, there was no audience, no cameras, no fear. Only two people who had finally learned that love built on truth does not need to be perfect. It just needs to be honest. The sun dipped lower, wrapping them in a soft golden glow. And for once, the world outside their story fell completely silent. Months passed, and for once, peace did not feel temporary. The new studio thrived under the Haven Project banner, filled with the scent of paint and fresh ideas. Lena's laughter often echoed through the wide windows, mingling with the hum of creativity and life. Ethan was there every day, stripped of titles and bodyguards, wearing rolled-up sleeves and a quiet smile that spoke more than any press release ever could. He no longer carried the weight of being the CEO. Instead, he carried coffee cups and canvases, helping artists find their rhythm. The walls slowly filled with artwork, each piece signed by someone whose life had been changed by a second chance. Lena watched him one afternoon as he helped a young artist hang her painting, his hands steady, his patience endless. It was hard to believe that this was the same man who once lived behind glass boardrooms and polished words. When he turned and caught her watching, his grin was boyish. "What?" he asked. She shrugged. "You look happy." "I am," he said simply. "And you?" "Getting there," she replied. They stood in silence for a while, the soft notes of music drifting through the speakers. Later that evening, when the others had gone home, Lena sat sketching near the window while Ethan finished cleaning up. The glow of the city lights spilled across the floor, painting him in gold. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly. "The power, the chaos, the spotlight?" Ethan paused, then smiled faintly. "Not once." "You are lying," she teased, but he shook his head. "I used to think success was about being seen. Now I know it is about being understood." She looked down, tracing a line on her sketchpad. "That sounds like something you would put on a billboard." "Maybe," he said, walking closer. "But it is true, you taught me that." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You give me too much credit." "Not enough," he said, his voice lower now. "You walked into my life pretending to need me, but it was me who needed you." Her breath caught. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of the city faded into a quiet rhythm, the kind that comes when hearts align without trying. "Ethan," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper, "you know this is not a fairy tale. Real life gets messy." He smiled. "Good. I never liked perfect endings anyway." Before she could reply, a sudden knock on the door startled them both. It was Claire, his old PR director, standing stiffly under the doorway, holding a folder. "I had a feeling I would find you here," she said, her tone professional but not unkind. "Ethan, the board wants you back. The company has been struggling without your leadership." He sighed quietly. "I told them I am not coming back." Claire looked between them, then lowered her voice. You can still help. There is a charity gala next week. Press will be there. If you appear with her, you can show everyone the Haven Project's work and redirect the narrative. It could help thousands of families. Lena's stomach twisted. You want us to go public together? It would make a difference, Claire said. But the choice is yours. She left before either of them could respond. The room felt suddenly heavy. Ethan turned toward Lena, his face unreadable. You do not have to do this, he said. I know how much you hate the spotlight. She met his eyes, thinking of the artists, the kids, the projects waiting for funding. It is not about me, she said softly. If this helps the Haven Project, I will do it. He stepped closer. Are you sure? She nodded. But this time, we do it our way. No scripts, no lies. He smiled, reaching for her hand. Agreed. For a moment, the fear that once ruled her heart was replaced by something fierce and certain purpose. The next chapter of their story would not be about pretending to be together. It would be about standing together, for real. And as they locked eyes in the soft light of the studio, both knew that what started as a fake relationship had become something neither fame nor failure could undo. A partnership built, not on image, but on truth. The night of the charity gala arrived with the kind of glitter that once defined Ethan Reed's world. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, soft jazz hummed through the air, and cameras flashed like lightning along the red carpet. For the first time in months, Ethan wore a suit again. But this time it felt different. The tie was simple, the smile real. When Lena stepped out of the car beside him, in a modest black dress and her hair swept back, the crowd went quiet for a second before the murmurs began. That is her, the Haven Project girl. She is beautiful. Lena's fingers tightened around his arm, and he leaned closer. Just breathe, he whispered. We are not here to impress anyone. We are here to show them something real. She nodded, her heart pounding as they walked inside. The event was held to support underfunded art programs across the city, and banners of the Haven Project lined the walls. People were curious but respectful, whispering more about the cause than the scandal that once surrounded them. Halfway through the evening, Claire approached the stage with a microphone. Tonight, she said, we celebrate not just art, but the courage to rebuild. Please welcome the two people who turned controversy into compassion, Ethan Reed and Lena Carter. Applause filled the room. Lena froze for half a second, then felt Ethan's hand slide gently into hers. Ready? He whispered. She smiled nervously. No, but let us do it anyway. They stepped onto the stage together, facing hundreds of faces and dozens of flashing lights. Ethan began. A year ago, I thought success meant numbers, headlines, and control. Then life reminded me that the only things worth building are the ones that lift others up. He glanced at Lena, his eyes soft. This project started because of one person's courage to be kind when she had every reason not to. She gave me back something I lost: purpose. The audience grew quiet, drawn in by his sincerity. Then Lena took a breath and stepped forward. The Haven Project is not about us, she said, her voice steady. It is about second chances, about people who are told they are not enough, finding a space where they finally are. Her gaze swept the room, landing on the artists whose work decorated the walls. We are all just stories waiting to be seen. Tonight, you are seeing ours. The applause was thunderous, not the polite kind, but the kind that carries gratitude. As they stepped down from the stage, a group of young artists surrounded them, thanking them for believing in them. One of the girls handed Lena a small painting, a pair of hands holding a single key. For you, she said shyly, because you opened the door for all of us. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Ethan, who smiled and mouthed, see? The rest of the night blurred into laughter and photographs, but this time, every flash of light felt less like judgment and more like celebration. Near the end of the evening, Ethan guided her onto the terrace, away from the crowd. The city lights stretched out before them, and the noise faded behind glass doors. You were incredible, he said. You too, she replied. I think we just changed something tonight. We did, he said softly. And maybe we changed ourselves a little too. She turned to face him. Ethan, I was terrified of this, of being seen again, but it does not feel like before. Because this time, he said, taking her hand, you are not standing behind me. You are standing beside me. For a moment they just stood there, the world below them pulsing with light and promise. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the same Polaroid photo he had once sent her months ago, the one cropped to show only their hands. "I kept it," he said, "because it reminded me what real feels like." She smiled, her eyes wet but shining. "You know, we could take a new one." "We could," he said. "But this one tells the whole story. Two people pretending, and somehow finding the truth in the middle of it." He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "Lena, what we have. It stopped being pretend a long time ago." She nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "I know." Around them, the city glowed brighter, as if the universe itself was quietly applauding. They stayed there for a while, hand in hand, two people who had built something real out of the ruins of pretense, finally unafraid to be seen for who they truly were. A year later, the world had changed quietly around them. The Haven Project had grown from a single studio into a movement that touched every corner of the city. What began as a scandal had transformed into a story people shared with hope rather than gossip. The tabloids had long since stopped caring. But for Lena and Ethan, that night at the gala had marked the beginning of something steady, real, and beautifully ordinary. They had built their own rhythm coffee in the mornings, meetings with artists during the day, quiet dinners where the conversation flowed like soft music. Ethan had officially stepped down as CEO, leaving Evolve Group in capable hands, while dedicating himself fully to the Haven Project. The public called it redemption, but to him, it was simply peace. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted past the studio windows, Lena arrived early to prepare for a new exhibition. The space smelled like fresh paint and pine wood, her favorite combination. On the central wall hung a large blank canvas waiting for the first brushstroke. She was lost in arranging the easels when she heard a familiar voice behind her. "You are still the first one here," Ethan said, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Old habits," she replied, smiling. "And you are still late." "I prefer fashionably delayed," he teased, setting a cup beside her. She laughed, shaking her head. "You always have an excuse." He looked at her, his eyes soft. "Only for you." The morning light caught the faint scar on his hand, the one he had gotten while helping build the first studio. It had faded, but it was still there, a quiet reminder of where everything began. As she turned back to her work, she noticed something different. On the table lay a small wooden box she did not recognize. "What is that?" she asked. Ethan leaned against the doorway, his voice calm but steady. "Open it." Inside, nestled in velvet, was a simple silver ring engraved with 2 words, "No pretending." Her breath caught as she looked up at him, her heart thundering. "Ethan." "Before you say anything," he said gently, walking closer, "this is not a grand proposal or a headline story. It is just me asking the woman I love to keep building this life with me, whatever it looks like." Tears blurred her vision as she whispered, "You still think I am the brave one?" "You are," he said, smiling. "You always were." He took her hand and slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had always belonged there. "I do not need an audience this time," he said softly. "Just you." She nodded, her voice trembling with warmth. "Then you have me, for real this time." He pulled her close, the scent of coffee and paint between them, the world outside fading into a blur of light. Later that evening, the studio filled with friends, artists, and children whose laughter echoed off the walls. No reporters, no flashbulbs, just family, community, and joy. As the lights dimmed for the first dance, someone played a soft tune on the guitar, and Ethan reached for her hand again. "May I?" he asked. "You already did," she said, smiling through tears. They moved slowly, the rhythm of the song blending with the heartbeat of everything they had built. Around them, people clapped softly, unaware that the couple dancing in the center of the room had once started as a lie. Outside, the city glittered under the evening sky, the same skyline that once watched their story unfold in chaos now bearing witness to their peace. As the song ended, Lena whispered against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" "Every day," he said, kissing her hair. "And I would make the same mistake again if it meant finding you." She laughed quietly. "Then I guess that makes us both guilty." "Guilty," he agreed, "of falling in love for real." The camera of life pulled back slowly in that moment, the laughter, the music, the art, the promise, all blending into a single truth. What began as a pretend, romance had become a partnership built on honesty, kindness, and second chances. And as the night faded into soft light, Lena and Ethan's story found its final frame not with an ending, but with a beginning. Because the best mistakes, the ones worth keeping, always lead you home.